My name's Karl. I'm an alcoholic. I need to find out something first as to whether I can stand over there and turn the microphone and whether the tape will still pick it up. It'll work? Yeah. All right. Good, because I'm going to have to move back and forth between the board and here. Anyway, I'm very...
Would you maybe want us to put the board up on the thing there with you?
That might be perfect. Can we do that?
You want to get the...
All right. That might even make it easier for everybody to see, too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd really like to thank Michael for having me down here, and happy birthday. That's just fantastic. And I think it's great that he puts these things on and makes these types of things available to everybody. I think he's far more important in this room than I am, that's for sure. So, we're going to talk about mainly the doctor's opinion. And we're going to focus in on step one and what's really wrong with us. The reason I love to talk about the doctor's opinion, also, I am going to be, hopefully, as we go along, you'll find out that I indeed am a hopeless alcoholic that really has no business standing alive in front of you today. Hopefully I can convince you of that as we go along. But the thing that I really think was the key to Alcoholics Anonymous starting was that finally somebody figured out what was wrong with us. All along through history, there's been religion had always thought, we need something, we need some sort of spiritual change, we need something, we need religion, we need something. Everybody kind of knew that we needed something, but nobody knew what was wrong with us. That was the main problem. And if we look through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, if we just look in Bill's story, it wasn't until he found out what was really wrong with him from Dr. Silkworth that he was able to get on the road of recovery. If you look at the way that Bill met Dr. Bob, that was the key. Dr. Bob had been in the Oxford groups for quite some time, and he had been praying, he had been trying to practice a different way of life, but he never knew what was wrong with him. And until Bill came with the message of what was actually wrong with him as an alcoholic, that's when Bob got sober, right? And if we look in fact, before we get to the doctor's opinion, I'll show where Carl Jung, if we open up to There's a Solution, we're going to show that Carl Jung, the psychologist over in Europe, world renowned, one of the most phenomenal psychologists the world has ever seen. I mean, if you go to get a degree in psychology or psychiatry, you're going to be asked, you'll take one of two schools, either Freudian or Jungian. Right? He's very, very influential even today. And he knew what we needed. And we're going to see this by reading here on page 27. He knew what we needed, but he didn't know how to produce it, and he didn't know what was wrong with us, right? So let's read right there real quick on page 27 where this man named Roland Hazard had spent a year with Carl Jung, had been sent over from Vermont over to Europe, spent a year with Dr. Carl Jung, had did wonderful therapy work, really got to know the inner workings of his mind, as he says, and after a year, he got back on the ship to go back to the United States, back to his family, and the best knowledge that I have is he showed up drunk off the ship. Family kicked his ass, sent him right back onto the ship, sent him back to Europe, and he came back to Dr. Jung and said, what happened? What's the matter with me? And that's when Dr. Carl Jung said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. And this is where he explains that to him. And we're going to see that Carl Jung knew what our solution should be, but he didn't know what was wrong with us. And that's where Dr. Silkworth, and I'm going to talk more about who Dr. Silkworth was in case anybody, how many people do really know who Dr. William B. Silkworth was? Okay, so we actually have quite a few that don't, so we'll get into that. But Carl Jung here, would somebody like to read real quick from back there? Okay, Larry.
What we're going to do, Michael, again, being the brilliant man he was, brought it up to me that, you know what, since it's being taped, maybe from now on we will read from the podium. But anybody who might be listening to this tape in the future, all you got to do is open your book from on page 27 and read that middle paragraph, and that's what was just read. See, he was actually, he knew what we needed. He knew that we needed what he called emotional displacement, rearrangement, a vital spiritual experience, and he knew we needed that. But he didn't know how to produce that in an alcoholic. He said, many individuals I've been successful with, but I've never once been successful with an alcoholic of your type, right? And I believe based upon my experiences, that the reason he couldn't produce it in us is because he was missing that one thing. He didn't know what was really wrong with us. He didn't understand allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. Now that information was sitting across the ocean there in New York at Towns Hospital with Dr. William B. Silkworth. And that's really how Alcoholics Anonymous converged. It's when that information from Carl Jung came over and converged in on Bill through the Oxford groups and Roland Hazard, through Ebby to Bill, our solution. And Bill knew the solution from, what was wrong with us from Dr. Silkworth. That's how Alcoholics Anonymous started. I'm convinced of that. Now, since a lot of you didn't know who William B. Silkworth was, he's non-alcoholic. And he was the head of the alcoholic, actually he says, it's Towns Hospital. It was basically what we would call a detox ward right now. Right? It was in New York, called Towns Hospital. He was the head of, is that you, Reba? Hey, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a long time. All right. Sorry about that. He had been running this the detox ward for a long time there in New York. Now this is, of course, the late 20s, early 30s, and this is where Bill used to show up when he was living on the streets and showing up at the detox centers. And that's where Dr. Silkworth was actually the first medical doctor to ever give the description of alcoholism as a disease. He's the first one that, he's not really the first one, I'm going to mention that. There was another one, Dr. Benjamin Rush, way back in colonial times, that actually wrote a paper that had said that he believed that alcoholism was a disease, but something happened there to where that paper was not given any credibility and didn't stand the test of time. Not really sure. Some of the stories I had heard is that he did some other crazy things and kind of lost his reputation as a doctor. That may just be AA folklore, I'm not really sure. However, Silkworth really risked his reputation. See, these days, we kind of take it, the American Medical Association agrees with it, we all agree, nobody really argues too much that alcoholism is a disease. Back then, not so. Dr. Silkworth was seriously risking his reputation by actually stating that alcoholism was indeed a disease. Now, so Silkworth gives the problem to Bill, right? Tells him what's wrong with him, and I'm gonna outline on the board here kind of what Silkworth had said, and we're gonna go back into the doctor's opinion quite a bit and find proof of this, at least as far as I found. I'm gonna put on 3 columns here. If you're listening to the tape, what we're doing is we have one of those dry erase boards, and we're making 3 columns here on the white board. First column. Physical. Mental. See, one of the biggest problems that I always had is I'd be sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous when I was brand new, and it's read at every meeting. We admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. And I would secretly sit there and go, what does it mean to be powerless? You know, what do they really mean by powerless? I don't know. I know I get in a lot of trouble when I drink, and I know that I feel terrible when I'm not drinking. But what do you mean by powerless? And I'm convinced that I needed to understand exactly what it meant to be powerless. Until I was taken through the doctor's opinion by my first sponsor, I didn't understand what it meant to be powerless over alcohol. Okay, so that's what I think the next 20 minutes or half an hour we're going to talk about, is what does it mean to be powerless over alcohol, and we're going to see how the doctor's opinion supports that. Let's open up to the doctor's opinion. It's in Roman numerals. And let's kind of see what, right in the beginning there's a paragraph there that's written by, now we have to realize that there's really 3 different sections here to the doctor's opinion. It opens up with a little introduction by the people of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That first paragraph. They're saying that this sort of an introduction to who the doctor is. And then this first section is kind of just a letter of endorsement for AA, if you've never read that. It's just really, Alcoholics Anonymous first asked Silkworth to write a letter of endorsement for what they were doing. And he just wrote that short little 4 or 5 paragraphs stating what he knew about this small little fledgling community of drunks helping drunks. And he basically summed it up with saying, you may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. He was just giving a letter of endorsement. But then the people of Alcoholics Anonymous asked him to do more, right? They said, we really want to know, what was it that you had told Bill? We want to know, write further about alcoholism, and we'd like to have that in our book, and he agreed. Now, this little section there on Roman numeral 24, right after the letter of endorsement, that is a section, again, written by the people of Alcoholics Anonymous at the time, Bill and the other 100. And they say something very, very important here. It says, the physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms that we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or we were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent, with some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. So right there, they are saying it's absolutely vital that we as alcoholics understand the physical factor about ourselves, our physical relationship to alcohol, and how abnormal that is. They said that our bodies were sickened as well, that our bodies are abnormal. They were conceding, yes, our minds are quite abnormal, and we're going to get to that in the second category. But we got to understand physically, what's the deal? What is the deal with what happens to us? And notice the next paragraph. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. Right? So let's put that as the first thing that we need to understand. Allergy. What is an allergy? Anybody know? Abnormal reaction. Right? Yeah, Reba's back there clapping for me. It's an abnormal reaction. Right? Is there anybody here that's allergic to strawberries? Oh, we got one. Okay. Now, we have about 70 people in this room, and one woman raised her hand. Now, what happens to you when you eat strawberries? She breaks out in big old hives, right? But how many people enjoy strawberries in this room and eat them at least 5 times a year or so? Yeah, most of us. Right. And the reason she has what we call an allergy to strawberries is because most people are okay with strawberries and can enjoy them. Less people, maybe 1 out of 70, have an abnormal reaction to strawberries. Now, what if most everybody in this room broke out in hives or wound up in the hospital as a result of eating strawberries? And 1 or 2 raised their hand and said, I can eat strawberries very safely. Then what would we call strawberries? Poison. Strawberries would be poison, because then the normal reaction to strawberries would be this breaking out in hives. So all allergy really means is normal versus abnormal. And so when they talk about our reaction to alcohol as an allergy, all they're saying is most people can drink it safely. Some of us can't. Right? Now, she says that her symptoms for when she eats strawberries and having that allergic reaction is that she breaks out in hives. Is that what happens to us when we drink alcohol? Do we break out in hives? The joke around AA is, well, I break out in jails, right? That type of stuff. But that's just kind of a little joke. You see, that's the symptom. Her breaking out in hives would be the symptom of her allergy. We have very strange symptom that can't be seen to the naked eye. In fact, bartenders can't see it, family members can't see it, we really don't see it. But the best way I can describe my symptom is, I seem to get thirstier the more I drink. Right? I got this bottle of water about 10, 15 minutes ago. I've drank about one quarter of it. I'll probably finish it by the end of the time that I get done speaking. However, I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going to be stopping by the Sparklets factory on the way home telling them I need 25 cases of water. It doesn't set up what the book calls a phenomenon of craving. That is our allergic reaction. That is the symptom of our allergy. Most people do not experience that. I asked my mother. She's an actual non-alcoholic. No way, shape, or form is she alcoholic or addictive in any way. And I asked her, hey, Mom, because she has about maybe 2 glasses of wine, 3 glasses of wine a year. And it's rare that she finishes that glass of wine, right? And I've asked her, hey, Mom, have you ever just meant to have a half a glass of wine and accidentally drank the whole bottle and went to jail? And she looks at me like I'm speaking Chinese. Just, what are you talking about? She can't identify with that. She can't even comprehend that. She cannot even comprehend any kind of loss of control with alcohol. She doesn't get it. Let's see what the doctor has to say about it. We jump up a couple of pages here in the doctor's opinion. It's on Roman numeral 28. You know how to read Roman numerals? XX is 10 for each X. V is 5. The I is 1. So XXVII would be 28. Okay, it's on the second paragraph down. Oh, sorry. Wrong. Roman numeral 26. That would be XXVI. Okay, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So an average temperate drinker, such as my mother, would never have experienced it. Okay? Now, does that mean that only the chronic alcoholics like us would have ever experienced this allergy, this phenomenon of craving? Because they only said it never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Let's look at it's further up in the book, but we need to look at this real quick. They classify drinkers in 3 categories in There Is a Solution. Okay, let me find that real quick. Page 20 in actual numbers, page 20. Bottom of the page on page 20. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely. If they have a good reason for it, they can take it or leave it alone. Any of those in here? Just take it or leave it, no big deal. Okay. I'd rather take it. Those are the type of people that have always, I don't identify with them on any level, right? I like them. I mean, they're nice people, but in regards to alcohol, I have and they look at me strange. Like, it's another thing. Here's an example. My mother coming down, I'm 17 years old, I'm in jail. She comes down and she looks baffled. Just, what happened? You had promised. You had just gotten that job. You were going to go back to school. You're going to go to school. And what happened? And she doesn't get it. And I'm standing behind those bars, and the only thing I'm thinking is, well, I know it doesn't look like that it was a good idea now. I know that it doesn't look good now. But it sure seemed like a good idea the other day when I started drinking. Right? She just can't get it. She's a moderate drinker. Now, that's the category that they are talking about here in the doctor's opinion, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. It would never occur in this moderate drinker. Then they give us a second category, and that is, then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. He may It may cause him to die a few years before his time if a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative. This man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome, may even need some medical attention. I think this category, they know what it means to have this physical allergy, but they're missing another component. We'll get back to that. But then they talk about the third category. What about the real alcoholic? Okay, I think both the second category there, the certain type of hard drinker, and the real alcoholic have this physical side. But there's going to be a difference to that, and we'll get to that when we get into the next column. Okay. There's another thing that in my life, in the physical side of this, that happens to me. I don't know, I think it happens in most alcoholics, but maybe not. But it happened to me the very first time I ever drank. I was 11 years old, stole a bottle of wine from my father, and proceeded to drink. The phenomenon of craving kicked in, I lost control. I wound up drinking 2 bottles of wine at 11 years old. Got wasted. But there was this time, there was about 15, 20 minutes in there after about half of the first bottle that I got this overwhelming feeling. I just remember going, I remember taking this big, deep breath, just, Now, I didn't know I'd been short of breath for 11 years. I didn't know that, right? But I believe that myself, that I get an overwhelming sense of relief from alcohol that other people don't. Because I'm thoroughly convinced that if everybody got that feeling from alcohol that I got, that feeling, they drink like me too. But most normal drinkers, non-alcoholics, is sort of, they can have a rough day, stressed out, family problems, work problems, and all this type of stuff, and they come home and they have a drink or two, and they just get a little bit relaxed, and they're still thinking about their problems, right? And then they kiss the kids, they make up with their wife, and they call their boss and make up, and they go to bed and start the next day off. Me? I take a drink? What job? What family? Right? I'm down at the Apache bar with my best friends, right? So I get an abnormal sense of euphoria, also from alcohol, right? When you couple those two things, that I get an abnormal sense of euphoria, and then the allergy, the phenomenon of craving kicks in, I have no control when I drink. I am powerless when I drink. When I take a drink of alcohol, if this is booze, I can be physically sober right now. If I were to take any booze at all in my system, I am going to activate this phenomenon of craving. But it only happens when I'm actually drinking, right? Well, if that's all that made me an alcoholic, you wouldn't need me over here. You wouldn't need anybody over here. Because who would be the biggest hero if this was all there was to being an alcoholic? Is we lose control when we drink, and we get into trouble, we go to jail, we lose families, jobs, lives, everything, just because of what happens to us when we drink. There would be a woman back in the mid-'80s that would be an international hero, would have solved the problem of alcoholism and drug addiction. Her name was Nancy Reagan, because she came out on national TV and she said, "Just say no." All of us would have gone, "Ho, ho, ho," and we would have turned our backs on what had been causing us trouble, and we would have gone on to live happy and successful lives. And we would have looked back at our drinking days like, "Wow, can't believe I did that," right? But there's something else, and I believe it's the most cunning, baffling, and powerful side of this disease called alcoholism. It's the part that nobody understands. Can't see it. It's as elusive as that phenomenon of craving that nobody can see. But this is the part where, like my mother looking at me in behind the bar saying, "But you had promised. You had just said you said you were going to go to school, you'd just gotten that job. What happened?" And I can't explain it to her. She can't figure it out, right? It's the part that when the Navy put me on antabuse. I ran into the Navy running from drug dealers when I was about 23. I'd love to tell you that I sort of like decided that I'd been a taker from society and thought I should serve my country and and get an education. But the fact was I was running from drug dealers and the law, and I joined the Navy. They put me on antabuse. When I was put on antabuse, as the days ticked by, I went slowly insane. And at this time, I remember it very, very vividly that there was only one thing worse than the trouble I was getting into from drinking, and that is the way that I felt when I was not drinking. I remember counting those days and looking around that ship, and all the other men, they're talking behind my back. All 300 of them. You ever feel that way in AA? Where they're all talking behind your back? The only difference is in AA, we're talking behind your back. Absolutely. It's the mental obsession. It's the mental obsession. Let's see what the doctor has to say about that. That would be on the bottom of page Roman numeral 26. This next paragraph describes my life to a T. XXVI. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. That's that euphoria that I was talking about. But also, normal drinkers also like the effect produced by alcohol. Rarely do people really like the taste. We can acquire a taste, but the human body actually revulses the taste. How many people have gone into a bar, ordered up a shot of Jack Daniels, and done this on their very first shot? Right? You kind of shake it off, and then you get the next one, and it's just kind of like, then the third one is like, bam, bam, right? All of a sudden it starts going down like water. The first reaction is your body's normal reaction to alcohol. It's the, right? Any guys that like to snort speed in here? How many like that burn? It's the same thing. We're going for the effect, but we will bypass, and we will actually, you line that stuff up and right? Eyes turn red, nose is flaring, and you're like, oh! Right? It's the body's natural revulsion, but then, of course, what happens is that we start to correlate the feeling that comes after that with the burn, and we start saying, I love that burn. No, we don't. We are looking for the feeling, the effect that comes after it. Right? All right, the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. It's one of the best definitions of the mental obsession I've ever seen. I cannot differentiate the true from the false. That's what it's the belief in the lie. I love the way some people put that, the belief in the lie. That somehow, someday, my mind seems to, no matter how much trouble I've gotten into, whether I've left the hospital a day, a week, a month ago, no matter how many cases I've got going on me, no matter how much I know rationally that if I get loaded again, I'm in serious trouble. I've got lots of experience to go along with that. Somewhere along the line, whether it be a day, a week, a month, 6 months later, my mind paints a false picture. It paints this picture that's a lie. That somehow, someday, I'm going to figure this out. Right? And that's what really kills us. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. How many people in here are on probation? Has anybody informed you lately that that's not normal? It's not normal to have a probation officer. How many people have court cases coming up? Hopefully people have let you know it's not normal to have court cases in your life. However, that had seemed to just become normal. Things like that were happening every 90 days in my life. The people I hung out with, we just had those things going on.
this friend of mine, Rob, was talking about in the morning meeting. It was just sort of like the people that he ran with, if you didn't have a PO and court cases coming along, nobody trusted you, right? Just because that becomes the normal life, right? They are restless, irritable, and discontented. Now that is the description of us when not drinking or using. With no alcohol or drugs in my system, I am restless, irritable, and discontent. I get frustrated. Here's the best way I can describe it. When I was about, about 22, my folks just got fed up with me. I'd been, for about last 4 years before that, I'd been just coming and going, and I would, I don't know if any of you had done that, but you know, you go out and you stay out for a few months, maybe 6 months, and then you come, oh, I promise, let me stay in the basement and I'll get it together, right?
Turn that key after drinking for a couple of hours, it was like, boom! It's like a mechanic had been working on my car while I'd been drinking. You ever notice the radio when it's all of the speakers are blown out and you're loaded? Man, it sounds great. Just sounds great. Yeah, right? But you see, I am totally restless, irritable, and discontent. And then I take a drink. I activate the phenomenon of craving. I get the abnormal sense of euphoria. You see, the thing is, only an alcoholic of my type, and I assume your type, can drink their car into a classic. I'm the only one that can be sitting down there on Skid Row in San Diego, and I walk in there I'd look around. It's the type of bar where you can smell the urinal from the sidewalk, right? And, you know, maybe Mama's Anchor Lounge, and there's this big, mean woman behind the counter, right? Tattoos, and outside the lights, you know, there's only about 2 of the lights that are working. It's flashing like that. And I'd be so frustrated and depressed and angry about my life, and I'd look at what I've come to, but this is the only place open at 6 a.m. that I can get. And I'd go in there and I'd look around and say, oh, man. Then I'd look at these losers that are in there at 6 a.m., sort of forgetting that I'm in there too. And I'd just be disgusted with my life. And I'd order a couple of drinks. Somewhere around the 3rd or 4th drink, I'm really happy to be in this fine establishment. Aren't I grateful that they're running such a fine business here? And I'd be talking to my new best friends, and, you know, that's the catch-22 that I'm in. I am absolutely frustrated with my life when sober, and I have an abnormal reaction when I drink. I'm in the ultimate catch-22. The ultimate catch-22. So, what we have is restless, irritable, discontent. And sooner or later, let's see what the next sentence in the book says. They are restless, irritable, and discontent, and unless they can again experience the ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks they see others taking with impunity, after they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, we believe the lie. I become so restless, irritable, and discontent. Also, the best way I can describe that in my life is that when I was not drinking, I would feel like I had a life-size body condom on me, just trapped. And I'd be looking through this thin film at the rest of the world, and they all seemed to have this set of directions that I didn't have, and I'd be trapped. And I would stand there on that street corner just, damn it. How do they live? How do they live? And then I would get so frustrated with my life that I would drink again. So this is the main issue. Because if we didn't have this, after a certain amount of trouble, we could just stop. We would just stop drinking. Just stop. When Nancy Reagan said just say no, we could have stopped. But we've got this. The book even says in there, I believe it's in There's a Solution. It says, in fact, let's turn to it. It's in There's a Solution. Let me find what page. Page 23. top. It says, these observations, meaning what we've been saying about the physical factor, the phenomenon of craving, the abnormal sense of euphoria that we get, these observations about what happens to us when we do drink would be academic and pointless, meaning meaningless, wouldn't mean anything, if we never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in the body. The real problem of alcoholism is the way we feel and operate in the world when we have no alcohol or drugs in our system. That's the real deal. It centers in our mind rather than in the body. Because if we never took a drink, doesn't matter. Ma'am, the one that's allergic to strawberries, ma'am, how often do you eat strawberries? There we go. Do you ever get sort of this unbelievable urge to go out and have a strawberry shortcake? No? Do you ever lie to your family about hiding money so you can get a strawberry shortcake? No. So the fact that you're allergic to strawberries is academic and pointless. Doesn't mean anything as long as you don't eat any strawberries. That's the difference. That's the difference. See? If that's all there was, if we just had this physical problem, this allergy, without that, we wouldn't need no Alcoholics Anonymous. Why would we come here? We'd all just be sitting at home saying, we'd get a phone call from our friend, hey, how you doing? He said, I'm just not drinking and using no matter what. Want to go to that AA meeting? What for? What for? Right? Now, it's the ultimate catch-22 of alcoholism. I cannot drink successfully. I cannot not drink successfully. You know what the catch-22 is? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I am powerless when I drink alcohol, use drugs. I am powerless when I am not drinking or using. I'm powerless. I've got no power when I have it in my system, and I've got no power when I don't have it in my system. Now, what does Alcoholics Anonymous deal with? Now let's look at the solution. Does Alcoholics Anonymous teach us how to overcome this physical factor? Do we solve the physical factor? Medical science keeps trying. You see, it's been going on ever since they started showing us trouble. Medical science has tried to figure out how to get us to not crave. I got to throw this in. They say to be fairly close to having this pill that supposedly will stop us from the phenomenon of craving activating once we put in alcohol. Who wants that? It's going to stop me from getting where I want to go if I'm going to drink. Do you really have an interest in a couple of drinks? The only reason I would want a couple of drinks is to have a couple of drinks while they're bringing me another couple of drinks. That's the only reason I got going on for a couple of drinks. Why would I take anything that would stop me from getting where I want to go? Now, if medical science could do this, I might raise an eyebrow. They said, if you take this pill, you can get as wasted as you want. And we promise you, you will never be arrested. You will never hurt anybody you love. Your career will go even better, and your family will be very proud of you. And you can get as wasted as much as you want. Then I might raise an eyebrow and go, you got something there. But if they're just going to give me something to block the phenomenon of craving, why do I want that? Why do I want that? All right. Does Alcoholics Anonymous deal with the mental side? Yes and no, indirectly. Oh, by the way, I should have said this in the beginning. If you want to interrupt me, ask a question, do anything like that, fantastic. I encourage anybody to just stick their hand up and say, hey, I don't quite know what you mean by that. Okay? So, what does Alcoholics Anonymous really do? What is the purpose of being here? How does it solve this problem? How does Alcoholics Anonymous solve this problem? This physical and mental problem that we have. Pardon me? That's the first thing. I know that when I was very first, for people on the tape, he said identification. That's the very first thing that happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was sitting in the back of the room
when I was fresh out of I was in a treatment center, and they took us to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been in the treatment center, and I wasn't really identifying, because they were sort of talking, they were asking in the first week, were you abused as a child? What kind of family did you come from? And all these things, and I was going, no, I wasn't abused as a child. Fantastic family. I had a good childhood, actually. You know, they were sort of doing the stuff that therapy and psychiatry do to sort of scan who we are. But when I came to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, through the reading, they read chapter 3 and chapter 5. And then people started to share. I remember sitting in the back going, oh my God, they know. I'm not sure what it is that they know that I think I know, but they know. They were talking about what happened to them when they did drink and what happened to them when they tried not to drink. And that's the very first thing that we're going to get. What I'm really convinced of is that Alcoholics Anonymous leaves these two things alone. Absolutely leaves these two things alone, the physical and mental side, and we actually do not work on those in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing we can do about the fact I am still just as allergic. I'm 13 and a half years clean and sober right now. I'm just as allergic, if not more allergic, to alcohol than I was when I first got here. The mental obsession seems to have disappeared. Let's look at where the book says that it just seems to have disappeared. It's in right before step 10, right in step 10. Should be in page, bottom of page 84 over to 85. It's when we've done the first 9 steps. It says we've learned how to do 10. And it says at the bottom of page 84, we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. Now, how many people have been through the steps, at least up to step 9? Was there a lot of thought and effort on your part in doing those steps? Yeah. Yeah. In fact, just before this, on bottom page 83, it says if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, meaning the first 9 steps, I mean, we have really done a lot of thought and effort here. But now they're saying, we see that our new attitude towards liquor has come without any thought or effort on our part. And this is where I'm convinced that the solution is here. Alcoholics Anonymous leaves the mental and physical side alone. We work on the spiritual malady of the alcoholic, and the mental obsession disappears. If this is column A, this is column B, this is column C. We work on column C. Column B solves itself, renders column A no big deal. Just like with her on the strawberries, it's no big deal that she's allergic to strawberries. So what does Alcoholics Anonymous do in the spiritual sense? Now, how many people have heard that we suffer from a spiritual malady? It's true. Maybe some of us more acute than others, but it's my belief that's the human condition. All people suffer from a spiritual malady. Everyone has it. That's why the churches are full. That's why people that are actually happy in this world lead a spiritual way of life. Now, if you're not alcoholic, you have the choice. Do I want to live a spiritual life or do I not? And the consequences for your choice are happy versus unhappy. Useful to the community, probably not so useful. You care about others versus only care about yourself. It's not a death sentence like with us. With myself as an alcoholic, I suffer from a spiritual malady which may or may not be. I've worked with so many alcoholics. Some have an acute spiritual malady going on, and some do not. But we all, as human beings, suffer from a spiritual malady, right? This sort of lack of, the book says that deep down within every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. But it's been sort of, what is the way the book puts it? It's in We Agnostics. Let's look at it. When in doubt, look at the book. It's in We Agnostics. Page 55. Second paragraph. Actually, we're fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or another, it is there. Now, myself as an alcoholic, I have obscured my fundamental idea of God drastically. How and why? Because my whole life, I've been trapped by the mental obsession and the physical allergy. I've either been drunk, lying about my last drunk, or trying to cover up enough stuff so I can get drunk again. I have never sought any spiritual way of life. I may have sought, but never did anything about it. And on top of that, I get an abnormal sense of euphoria from my drinking. That is my spirituality. You guys following me on that? When I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, a non-alcoholic, they go, you know what? I need to seek something. I need to go to church. I need to join something in the community. I need to sort of like find some peace. And they go on that search. Why do they go on that search? Because alcohol gives them no relief. Me, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, feeling bad about life. I know exactly where I can go. I can get, you ever noticed in restaurants, they still do it today, more, they used to do it more than now, but in many menus in the restaurant, there's a section called spirits. It's where the alcohol is. There's a reason for that. Do you know that the alcohol industry is after us? They are not interested in selling one or two drinks to people. I got proof of that, actually. You ever seen the Bud Light commercial? Why ask why? Remember that? Why ask why? Corporate America liquor companies are after us in their advertising. Why ask why? Non-alcoholic kind of goes, kind of strange, little catchy advertising there. We alcoholics think it's some new deep spiritual insight. Whoa. You ever seen the commercial where the guy's out in the desert and he's just about ready to die? You know, he's just, right, nothing around, cracks a beer, half-naked women, concert comes up through the sand. We're the only ones that believe that stuff. Normal drinker goes, wow. We go, been there. Been there. We might think, well, Michelob does it a little bit better than Budweiser, but... So everybody, all human beings suffer from a spiritual malady in one form or another. Because I've been trapped in the mental obsession, the physical malady, allergy with alcohol my whole life, I probably have a more acute spiritual malady than others. But I've met some non-alcoholics that have acute spiritual maladies. You probably have run across a few too, right? They are just absolutely dying spiritually, and you kind of want to tell them, learn how to drink. Then we got a solution for you, right? Go get loaded, get arrested a few times, and then I might be able to help you. So everybody has a spiritual malady. And I'm convinced that Alcoholics Anonymous solves our spiritual malady. The best way I've ever heard it put is by my late sponsor, Eddie C., who just died about a year and a half ago. He used to say, Alcoholics Anonymous gives us a life that is so full that there's no room for alcohol or drugs anymore. I look at my life today and I go, where would I fit it in? Because when I drink, it's at least 2 or 3 days. Right? 2 or 3 days. I love the saying when out with some friends and you go to a restaurant and the steward, the waitress comes by and says, like anything to drink, got kamikazes on special today. They say, no, I have to be back at work by Christmas. There's no room for it. There's no room for it. And the very first thing that we do, when a new person comes into Alcoholics Anonymous, you know what? We've been going for 1 hour, right? Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about this. Thanks.